Welcome to Interfaith Views and Issues, a program designed towards establishing tolerance and better understanding among different faiths and cultures. I am your host, Shafayat Muhammad, and with me in the studio today is Rabbi Barry Silver, very prominent person in South Florida, in the state of Florida, and nationally and internationally known. So we are very blessed and honored to have Rabbi Silver with us in the studio. Welcome, Rabbi. It is a pleasure to have you with us.
Sheikh Shafayat, it's always a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate your reciting that introduction exactly the way my mother wrote it for you.
Wow!
Thank you very much. She appreciates that.
You remind me of your father, Rabbi Silver. He was full of so much of humor, and he was such a wonderful man, you know.
Well, thank you. I'm lucky. I chose very well before I picked my parents, and I think I did a pretty good job.
Wonderful.
So I steal a lot of lines. If I say anything funny, it's probably one of my dad's lines. But thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the program that you do. To bring people together and to exchange views is a great thing. And using modern technology to do that is something that I think is wonderful. I wish I could do it, but since I can't, I'm glad to be here with you.
Well, you know, you're the lawyer, so we need to have friends like you around.
Wait, I thought you sauld you weren't going to be insulting me today.
Well, no.
Now you're calling me a lawyer. I thought I was going to keep that a secret.
So would you like to share with our viewers worldwide, would you like to share with them a little bit about your background? I know you got a very political background,
That's
very legal background as a former Florida state representative, as
right.
a lawyer, attorney at law. Do you want to share with our viewers a little bit about your background, Rabbi?
Sure. It's not easy being a lawyer and a rabbi. If somebody does something that's not very nice to me, I'm not really sure whether I should forgive them or sue them. I have to try to figure out how to respond to that.
You mean in the synagogue you got to forgive, and in the office you got to sue?
Actually, I'm lucky because I don't do that type of law where I have to act as many lawyers do. I do public interest law, and I do environmental law, and I work with different causes and organizations. So what I do as a lawyer coincides, dovetails with what I do as a rabbi. I'm very interested in different issues, as you are. We might not necessarily be with the same issues, but we both agree that religion should be used to improve our lives and improve the world. And we do that in different ways. What I am very interested in is protecting the planet. I think that if you look around the planet, you'll see perhaps the best evidence that there's a power greater than ourselves. And if you view the earth in that way and the universe in that way, then destroying the planet, wiping out species, destroying the beauty is really a form of sacrilege or blasphemy. If you believe that a creator put all this here, then to just wantonly destroy it for short-term gain or for money is really sacrilegious. And so I'm very interested in protecting the planet, interested in animal rights, do a lot of work with women's groups, very interested also in trying to right some of the wrongs that were done to Native Americans here. The treatment of Native Americans is something which is very shameful and abysmal, how we committed genocide. And so if there are Native Americans who are left and they need any help legally, then I help them for free, as I help others for free if they need some help.
Okay, good. So if we need some help, we could knock on your doors.
Anytime. I've had the privilege of representing quite a few people from the Muslim community, and including I had a gentleman who was not allowed to worship freely on Friday, and when he attempted to do that, he was ostracized. They made fun of him. And so I represented him in a discrimination case, and it worked out very well. So, yeah, that's true. If there are...
So could we let our viewers know, who down here in South Florida, that if people have that problem, because there are a lot of people who have that problem, not being able to go to work. Sometimes there are some students who are not allowed. And I know Yom Kippur, and Jewish holidays.
Right.
Jews are allowed to go to the synagogue and do their services, but a lot of Muslims have problems in getting that rights.
That's true. For a long time, the Jewish high holy days were of no significance to anybody. And if you were Jewish and you had to work on Yom Kippur or Rosh Hashanah, that was your problem. But nowadays, people recognize more that these Jewish days are significant. But the Muslim community, I think because they're more recent arrivals, and also because of some prejudice, they have difficulty obtaining the same type of respect for their day, and that is completely wrong. I remember when I was in college, I'm an athlete, I do lots of different sports, and I was on the tennis team at University of Connecticut. And my coach told us that we had a game on Yom Kippur. Today that would be unheard of, especially in South Florida because there's so many Jewish people. But up in University of Connecticut, he told me how to play on Yom Kippur. I said, I'm not playing it. I can't. And he said, well, that's too bad. You have to play. And he was going to punish me. So I left the team and joined the Frisbee team instead.
Wow.
But I remember, if that happened to me today, I would have made a lot of noise and said, this isn't right. But I just left. I was kind of interested in Frisbee anyway, but I know that way back when I was a kid, it was a while ago, they didn't have any respect for the day a lot of times. And if there are Muslims and they're not respecting that day, that's totally wrong.
So you could help, you could put a word in,
I could do more than put a word in. I could file a lawsuit. I would send out a letter, I would file a grievance, and then eventually I could file a lawsuit. Now the way the law works, though, is that if somebody has some unreasonable requirements for their religion, or if it's very difficult, like they say, you know what, every Friday I need to take off for 3 hours because I got to drive over and do my thing, it would be reasonable for a boss to say, I understand, I respect that, but we can't accommodate that. That's okay.
Yes.
But if somebody says, hey, you know what, on a Friday I'd like to go off privately somewhere and go and do my prayers for half an hour, and if he asks that and then people start making fun of him, that's illegal. That's wrong, and you can take action about that.
If an employee works during his lunchtime throughout the week and asks for that hour or 2 hours that he put in the other 4 days on a Friday, is that practical?
Well, 2 hours might be a different story. If everybody's taking an hour off for lunch and he says, I need 2 hours, that might be different.
Yes.
But if he has an hour lunch and he says during that hour, I want to do my prayers, there is no way that any employer could ever say, no, you're not allowed to do that or retaliate in any way.
Good.
So, yeah, that they definitely cannot do. And what they also can't do is make fun of somebody or ostracize them or make jokes about them. Now, there's some workplaces where people make all types of jokes and off-color jokes.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make jokes about women. Sometimes they make jokes about black people. Sometimes black people make jokes about themselves, or Jewish people do. If there's that kind of atmosphere there and people seem to just go with the flow, it's okay. But the same type of joke, if it's not welcome or the atmosphere is different or it's only directed towards one group,
right,
and somebody takes offense at that, that is a hostile work environment, hostile workplace. That is not okay. And there's things you can do about it.
That's where your profession comes in.
That's where my profession comes
Excellent.
in. Once in a while, attorneys do the right thing.
Excellent. So, Rabbi, tell me something. Were you born in the U.S.A.?
I was born here in the United States.
And what about your dad, Rabbi Silva?
Yeah, my dad, I was really, really lucky because my dad lived to be 95, and I had the incredible fortune of working with him for 13 years.
So was he born here in the U.S.A.?
He was born in the U.S. He was born in Delaware.
And your
His
grandfather?
parents, my father's parents were born, Eastern Europe, where many, many Jewish people come from. Romania. My dad's mother was from Poland, and the two of them were from Eastern Europe, so they spoke Yiddish. And they came here, and they spoke Yiddish. They learned English, but their first language was Yiddish. And they would speak Yiddish to my father, I remember when I was a kid. And my mom, who was born here, and her parents were born here, my mom didn't know Yiddish. And so my father's parents thought that, hey, if you're Jewish, you're supposed to speak Yiddish. In their country, everybody who's Jewish spoke Yiddish. In fact, the word Yiddish means Jewish. Yid is like Yehuda. Yid, Yehuda, or in Arabic, I think it's Yahud.
Yahud,
right?
yeah.
Yahud, Yid.
Yiddish,
so Yiddish
wow.
means actually Jewish. So it's like, you don't speak Yiddish. What's the matter? You're not Jewish? So
because
they would speak Yiddish.
In Islam, we say Yahud and Nasara. Yahud refers to Jews and Nasara to Christians.
Right, Nasara, right.
And similarly, people believe that as long as you're a Jew, you came from Israel. I mean, we got our viewers all over the world, and that's why I ask you, where did your dad...
The Jews did come from Israel a few thousand years ago.
Right.
And there has been a continuous Jewish presence in Israel. But what happened was the Romans occupied, they were foreign occupiers of Israel, and the Jews fought back from 66 to 70 CE. And they waged an incredible war against them, but they eventually, the walls of Jerusalem were breached. The Romans came in, destroyed the temple, and killed lots of people. Well, the Jews believed that they had a special relationship with God that could not be usurped by any foreign occupier. So anybody in their right mind would have said, okay, we're done, we're lost, we give up. Maybe a third of the population was wiped out. But 65 years later, the Jews tried again, and they fought again in 135 CE. Under some incredible leaders, Bar Khutbah and Rabbi Akiba. Again, they were defeated, and this time the Romans, according to tradition, put salt in the field so nothing could grow, tossed out the Jews, tried to get rid of the Jewish population there because they were a bunch of troublemakers, and changed the name to a Latin name. And that started the Jewish diaspora. But there was still a presence there, but then most of the Jews left. And that was the problem, because Jews didn't have their own land and did not have their own homeland, they were subjected to all types of mistreatment, especially under the Christians, who for political and religious reasons had it in for the Jews. Their scriptures taught that Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus, which is a lie, but that's what their scriptures taught. So Jews really suffered incredibly wherever they went because they had they didn't have their own homeland. And that is why...
And in Islam, we believe if a Muslim had to be the lawyer for the Jews on the situation that the Christians accused the Jews for killing Jesus, the Muslims would have set the Jews free.
Absolutely.
Because we don't believe that Jesus died. And we don't believe that he was crucified.
Right.
So if he did not die and he was not crucified, then the Jews are innocent.
There you go. Because you don't have what we call in law the corpus delicti. That means the body of the crime. Literally, the body isn't there.
So there's no crime.
Right. So without the body, you don't have a crime. Right. If we had a Muslim lawyer, we'd do it. And actually, the Jews.
No problem.
Actually, the Jews did very well under Muslim rule, also for a long time. Because the Jews and the Muslims, when the Muslims were in control, we were doing great. It was when the Christians took over again that things took a steep downhill climb. And part of that is for religious reasons. The Christian religion is based on something called supersessionism, which is that God had a relationship with the Jews, the chosen people, which I as a Reformed Jew reject. I don't accept that. But according to the Bible, there's a chosen person concept. And then the Christians had to explain, well, wait, if God's people were the Jews, how did we get to be the people now? God doesn't change his mind. When God makes an eternal covenant, it's eternal covenant. So how do they change that? So they had to say, well, the Jews must have done something really, really bad to tick God off, to get him really mad, to breach the covenant. What did he do? Well, the Jews, let's say that they killed Jesus. And that way, the covenant was switched from the Jews to the new Israel, or there's now a new covenant, or a new Israel. So for religious reasons, the blame was switched. It was also political reasons. The Christians originally were looked on as the Jews were. To the Romans, there was no difference between a Christian and a Jew. They were all the same. Christians were just a different type of Jewish person who accepted Jesus, but they were all troublemakers. The Jews were fighting against Rome. Christians said that Jesus was the king, not the emperor, and he was the king of the Jews. So they were all the same.
And I believe that people today who got the minds of a Roman, or like of the Romans, also believe that Muslim, Christians, and Jews,
they're all the same.
They're all the same. We don't want to hear about religion. We don't want to hear about God, because they just got their whole secular mindset.
Well,
but you know what, Rabbi? This is an interesting topic. Very, very interesting. And I still want to get back to that point of your origin, because I like that. Because of your origin and your experience and your profession and your father's background, I think that has made you such a liberal and a moderate person, and we could sit as a Muslim and a Jew in an Islamic television network station and talk freely. That's something that is unheard of in many Muslim countries. And what we're doing here today is something really fantastic. And I know our viewers throughout the world some of them don't even believe that a rabbi and a sheikh can sit together and have this free, friendly conversation, because some of them believe that we should not be friends, which is a total misunderstanding and misconception. But we got to go on a break, and as soon as we come back, we'll continue this conversation. As we say, inshallah, God willing.
Sounds great. Shukran.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, friends, you have been viewing Interfaith Views and Issues. a program designed towards establishing tolerance and better understanding among different faiths and cultures. I'm your host, Shafat Mohammed, and as we said earlier, or for those of you who have just tuned in the studio with us today is Rabbi Barry Silver. When we get back, when we return after the break, we'll continue on this very interesting issue.
Tune in for Friday Khutbah at 1:30 p.m., broadcasting live from Darul Uloom Institute, Pembroke Pines, Florida, on Al Hikmah TV Online.
Welcome back to Interfaith Views and Issues, a program designed towards establishing tolerance and a better understanding among different faiths and cultures. I'm your host, Shafat Mohammed, and with me in the studio, we are pleased and honored to have Rabbi Barry Silver. Welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be here. Just wanted to pick up on what you were talking about, because you mentioned that the two of us come from different traditions, but we're still talking in a peaceful way.
And you know what? I wish the people in Palestine and Israel could do that.
That would be awesome if they could. Maybe this will help set the stage, because I know there's more and more dialogue like this going on.
We need to send a couple this show to the people in Palestine and Israel.
That would be awesome. You know, I've had the good fortune of meeting with you quite a few times and getting together, and I can say that you and I are really on the same wavelength as far as I'm concerned. I have much more in common with you than I have with many, many Jewish people.
You think it's because you were not born in Israel and I wasn't born in Palestine?
Hey, that could be. That might be. But I think we both have parents who shaped us and molded us to teach us, you know what, we have a good path. Mm-hmm. But it's not the only path, and not everybody has to be the same. That diversity is a good thing. If you were playing music and you just played the same note over and over, that's boring. If you had a work of art and you just had the same color, that's boring. But putting different things together in a way to make something beautiful is something that I know you're very interested in, I am too. And you mentioned that the two of us come from different traditions. You know, you have a show, it's called Al Hikmat, mm-hmm. and in Hebrew we say Chachma. And so many of the words, Salam Aleikum, Shalom Aleichem. You have Medina. Medina is we say Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel. Mm-hmm. So many of the words are the same. It's tragic, the fact that Jews and Muslims come from the same tradition, share so much in common, and they're separated. I believe that this show that you're doing and your efforts is one of the most important things that we could be doing in the world today. The fact that people that come from similar traditions don't talk to each other, are opposed to each other. Everyone out there should be doing everything we can in order to build bridges. And I have taught my kids, we go to picnics with Muslims, with Christians, with others. My kids and their kids throw the frisbee together. And I don't know if my kids learned anything about Islam so much, and I don't know if those kids learned anything about Jews so much, but one thing those kids learned mm-hmm. is that kids are kids, and they all like to have fun, and they all like to hang out with their parents, and they all have love for their families and their traditions. And when you see that, and when you participate in that, it's much more difficult to dislike someone. It's much more difficult to be brainwashed into thinking that these people are our enemies. And so this is the antidote to it. Not just so much sharing ideas, but just coming together and doing things together in a friendly way.
I want to say even more than similar background. I believe it's the same background. Because you know what? Technically and practically, we believe in the same God, the God of Moses, right. The God of Abraham. And again, I mean, your history back into Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael. I mean, like it or not, forget about the technicalities and whose wife and whose mother and which was the real first. And we believe Abraham had two sons, right. Ishmael and Isaac. You know, we came from the same background.
That's exactly right. If you go far enough back, then you'll come to the same place. And you know, there's a story in the Bible. I'm not sure how you call it. We have Jacob and Esau. I think you say mm-hmm. Jacob mm-hmm. and Esau. I don't know Esau. You know, in the Bible they had a little separation. They had a little bit of friction. Mm-hmm. But then the two of them reconciled. They came together and they hugged each other. And Jacob, according to Jewish scripture, said to Esau, "Seeing you is like seeing the face of God." Mm-hmm. And why would he say that? Why is seeing another person like the face of God? Because they came together in peace and they reconciled. And when people are living in peace, perhaps godliness then enters the world. And so this mission of bringing Jews and Muslims back together, as you say, who share so much in common and share a monotheistic belief. This is an urgent message and an urgent mission. If we don't do that, my father used to say, if we don't realize that we're all created equal, we'll be cremated equal.
And do you know, we believe, according to history, that Abraham was buried by his two sons,
Right.
Isaac and Ishmael.
Right.
See, if the two sons
Right.
from the two mothers came together to bury the father Abraham, I mean, why can't we unite?
And what would Abraham say now?
Yeah.
If he came back here and saw his children fighting in this way, what would any father say if he saw two kids that he produced arguing or fighting? He would be appalled and ashamed. And
Or
he would say,
separated
come on.
in the name of Palestine and Israel.
Right. He would say, come on, get back together. But as far as Israel goes, you asked me about my background and my parents' background. The reason why Israel is so important to the Jewish people is because we had a homeland at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just a homeland, it's the birthplace of our faith, the birthplace of our religion, where our forefathers and ancestors and the people who created our religion lived. And so it's holy ground. The Romans came and tossed us out. But for Jews, we've been saying for 2,000 years, next year in Jerusalem, it's not just a religious thing, it's a security thing. There's been no country where the Jews have been safe. Nowhere. And we saw that tragically culminating in the Holocaust, in which it was graphically made clear we need a place to be safe. So Israel is of paramount importance to the Jewish people. Now, there are some Jews who are so alienated by what's happened in the Middle East that they have no regard for the neighbors and no regard for the Palestinians. They have one horror story after another. And there are many Palestinians and Muslims who have heard many horror stories about the Jewish people. We need to try to get past that, because hate and animosity is a horrible thing for anybody.
And do you know what, Rabbi? I know I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your history
Right.
as a Florida state representative and what year
Right.
you got into politics and when, etc. But this is a very interesting topic. Maybe in another interview we talk about that.
Hey, I'll come
But-
back anytime.
Yes, but you know what? That point of Jews having a homeland, I mean, whatever the Christians or the politicians do, and the Romans, etc., the Muslims, and what I'm going to tell you here, I know a lot of viewers would disagree with me, but I don't care what they say. I'm referring to the Quran.
Right.
A lot of Muslims may disagree in what I'm telling you here, but the Muslims should be the first people to support the Jews in that homeland of Jerusalem. Why? Because the Quran tells us about Moses, David, Solomon, Prophet Abraham, where they came from, their homeland, and the Quran tells us that Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt and brought them to that holy land. And we believe in the Quran that it is God who directed Moses. God opened the sea and allowed the Israelites, who are considered the Jews today, into the Holy Land in Jerusalem. So if God did that, no Muslim and nobody in the world, people who are not Muslims, could probably think otherwise. But Muslims should believe that in the Quran, God opened the ocean for the Jews and the Israelites to come. God sent them there. God brought them there. It is the homeland for them, designed by God. So we, Muslims, should be the first people to work together with Jews, live together in oneness, and bring back that family touch that God established for us in the Quran.
Well, I appreciate your courage and your integrity in saying
And
that.
I say this on public television.
Well, I do appreciate that very, very much. And the Jews want nothing more than to live in peace, especially with Muslims and with the Arab neighbors. And if God opened up an ocean for the Jews to enter Israel, maybe God will also open up the hearts of all of Israel's neighbors to live in peace. We also think that the Muslims should have a homeland. And they do. There's like maybe 22 different Muslim states. There's so many different Christian countries. To ask for one tiny little piece of land that would be a Jewish state, especially since the Jews are established the monotheistic faith from which Islam and Christianity derived, you would think that Christians and Muslims would say, okay, the Jews can have one tiny state, especially after all that's happened to the Jews, who definitely need a place to live. As far as the Palestinians go, many people say, well, what about a Palestinian state? They should have one too. Not every place where somebody lives should become autonomous. In other words, I'm Jewish and I live in the United States. Does that mean that I should go around killing people because I want a Jewish state in the United States because I'm here? Or should the Christians say, well, I want a Christian state right here? Or should the Hindus? It's not inconceivable that Palestinians could live within a Jewish state. I mean, Jews live in the states of other religions all over the world, so it's not inconceivable. And I believe that the Palestinians in Israel have rights and are treated well, and there would be such peace and such prosperity if everyone laid down their arms. The Arabs and the Palestinians would see such a wonderful way of life if they made peace with Israel, and Israel would also see such prosperity and such benefits if they could live together in peace.
You know, a lot of people believe that the Quran has nothing to do with Jerusalem. But in chapter 17, verse 1 of the Quran,
Right?
it says that God took the Prophet Muhammad, Allah took
Right.
the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, from Mecca to Jerusalem and showed him the place called Baitul Muqaddas, or the Dome of the Rock.
Right?
And the Quran says that God took him and showed him that place, a place that God blessed, and God wanted him to see that blessed holy site. So the Quran authorizes it's the holy land and it's a blessed site. So the point is exactly what you're saying. That piece of land and that spiritual territory, if I want to call it like that, is a place that speaks for itself in the scriptures that Muslims and Jews should respect that place and should learn to live together because it's a godly place.
Right. And how tragic it is that in the Holy Land, people are fighting over holy sites. It's really very tragic.
And all Muslims and Jews go to that place. Do you know Muslims all over the world wish and they dream when they go to Hajj or pilgrimage.
Right.
And in the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said that there are 3 holy places that Muslims should visit technically before going on a vacation, before visiting Disney World and Disneyland. Muslims should make the effort to go to Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem.
That's
Oh
nice.
yes, it is considered very authentic and holy. It's not just about Palestinian fighting for land and Israel and Palestinians fighting. They should tear down the walls, unite together, everybody have their rights, and live in peace and worship their God.
Absolutely. And one thing I know is that if there was a desire on the part of the neighbors and the Palestinians to make peace with Israel, they would be able to become demilitarized and they would be able to have complete openness with the Palestinians, and I know that there would be blessings in that place. And
Definitely.
I really appreciate what you're doing to try to help make that happen.
We're going to get that, inshallah, God willing. And do you know what? This conversation is so interesting. The next thing I know, it's time up.
Hey, I'm sorry to hear
The
that.
clock is on us, and we got to really, really cut. So, Rabbi, in the next few minutes, or seconds, you got a few seconds, you got a minute at least, you are our guest. And in Islam, we believe that the guest should be treated the best. So you have a final word.
Hey, I appreciate that. It's been a real pleasure being here. It's been great working with you. When I walk into mosques, and I've been to many, I actually can see firsthand the hospitality of Abraham. People are so friendly and so warm, especially towards Jewish people, and I try to reciprocate as much as I can. And what you're doing, using religion, not to cause conflict, not to cause harm, but to bring people together, you're doing God's work. I congratulate you, and I thank you very much for allowing me the privilege to be here with you as you help to spread the word of peace and openness and friendship.
Well, thank you very much, Rabbi. It has been a pleasure again to have you with us, an honor and a privilege to have you with us in Al-Hikmah TV in this studio. And you wanted to
And
say
salam alaikum
Shalom
to
and
all
alaikum
the Muslims throughout the world. I wish you much peace, and I hope that we can establish wonderful relations between Jews and Muslims.
Thank you very much. Well, viewers, you have been viewing Interfaith Views and Issues, a program designed towards establishing tolerance and better understanding among different faiths and cultures. I'm your host, Shafayat Mohammed, and those of you who have been viewing this program, the conversation today with the Rabbi was directly to the point on tolerance and better understanding among faiths and cultures. Rabbi Barry Silver, a former Florida State Representative, a Rabbi, and an attorney. It was a pleasure to have him with us. And do tune in to Al-Hikmah TV, same time, same station, next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.